Hello, my name's Kevin Baker. I'm a hypnotherapist at a practice called Clarity and Wellbeing, which is based in Winchester in Hampshire. In this short audio recording, I'd like to talk a little bit about how our thoughts affect our body, particularly in situations where a part of our body is affected by illness or disease. In the first audio that I did on this subject, it was more of an introduction and really saying that it's really important what we think, especially when we're affected by illness or disease, in terms of in relation to actually recovering and healing taking place. But this audio just looks for a few minutes in a little more depth about actually what happens chemically in the body when we have thoughts in terms of healing taking place. So when we have a thought, our thoughts produce chemicals in the brain. And many of these are known as neurotransmitters, and you may have heard of dopamine and serotonin, which are two of the most commonly known neurotransmitters. So when we think thoughts, neurotransmitters are released from the branch of a neuron being a brain cell. So when I refer to brain cells, I'll refer to them as neurons. So when we think a thought, neurotransmitters are released from the branch of a neuron, and they make their way to the tip of a branch of another neuron. Now when this happens, it produces a bolt of electricity, and this is what's known as a neuron firing. Now interestingly, when we repeat a thought several times, an additional chemical, a protein, is stimulated, and this makes its way to the nucleus, to the center of the neuron, and when it gets to the nucleus, it finds DNA, and it then activates or switches on several genes of DNA, because our DNA is actually made up of around 25,000 genes. Okay, so it's basically all this means is that the genes in our DNA have been activated by a state of mind. And this is mind over matter, rapidly, very, very rapidly taking place at the genetic or the cellular or the molecular level, whichever way you like to think about it. Now, another type of chemical called a neuropeptide is also produced in the brain, and these basically interface with neurons by attaching to a part of the surface of the neuron, which is known as a receptor. So on the surface of the neurons, there are receptors of all different shapes and sizes, and neurons contain thousands of these receptors, all different shapes and sizes, and they allow neuropeptides which fit onto the receptors to dock, to attach onto them, basically. So if a certain neuropeptide is produced over and over again in a certain part of the brain, then neurons in that area produce extra receptors in order to cope with the extra neuropeptides, if that makes sense. So for example, if let's take an example of say endorphin. If endorphin, which is a neuropeptide, were produced over and over and over again, then neurons in the brain would evolve extra endorphin receptors, so that allowing them to dock onto. And this is basically how things like tolerance to substance and addictions works. For example, if a person keeps taking a substance such as alcohol or heroin, then neurons would evolve extra alcohol or heroin receptors, and before long the person requires more of that drug, more of the heroin or the alcohol, requires more of it to get the same fix. And so, as I say, that's how addictions and tolerance to substance are formed. Now, Many neuropeptides don't just hang around in the brain. Many are released into the bloodstream and flow around the body. And this is just further evidence that our thoughts produce neuropeptides and they affect our body. And since neuropeptides play an important role in many of the body's organs and systems, it's clear that the mind affects many organs and systems in the body. So, not only does our mind affect the brain, it affects our body at the cellular, at the molecular level. DNA, genes, affected by our thoughts, by our mind. Mind over matter, the molecular level. Now, I just want to mention at this point, when we're talking about cell regeneration, so our cells that are casting off and dying every second and being replaced by new cells, so cell regeneration, which is essentially how healing takes place. Now, it is absolutely crucial that stress, during times of healing from a disease or illness, it is absolutely crucial that stress is kept to an absolute minimum, because stress reduces the level of growth hormones in the body. And if the level of growth hormones is reduced, then cell regeneration basically takes longer. So we need those growth hormones in our body to speed up, to facilitate the cell regeneration and for healing to take place. So in other words, stress is a bad thing when we are healing from disease or illness. We need to reduce those stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, get those levels down as low as possible. So all throughout our body, genes, basically, as I say, our genes are responding to our thoughts, are responding to our minds, and so when we teach our clients techniques such as visualization to focus their attention on a part of their body that is affected by illness or disease, that's where the thoughts affect the genes, and that's where basically it aids the regeneration of a damaged or diseased part of the body. So this wonderful technique of visualization involves, I'm not going to go through the technique in detail now, but it involves focusing on the part of the body. It may be, I don't know, a tumor, for example, focusing on that part of the body, and when that happens, the cells in that part of the body are activated, and the cells in the part of the brain that govern that part of the body are also activated. But in addition to that, if we increase the amount of growth hormones, we reduce the amount of stress hormones, and we visualize, this is the key thing, if we visualize the affected part of our body healing, becoming better, tumor dissolving, whatever it is, then the healing will take place, will speed up and become much quicker. And as I said, this is not intended to replace medicine or medical treatment in any way, but it's to be used as well as, because if someone is suffering from illness or disease, then why not give themselves the best chance of a full and speedy recovery by, essentially taking everything that's going, the medicine, the medical treatment, and using your mind to help heal the body as well. I hope that you found something of interest somewhere in all of that. I try not to rush through it too much, but I do hope that maybe one day it will be great to meet you. I do hope you've enjoyed listening to this short audio. I've certainly enjoyed doing it. Thanks very much for listening. Goodbye for now.